What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you're excited for Dallas Cowboys training camp to begin in about a month. And because training camp is on the way, we figured now would be really the perfect time to start our training camp preview series. We're going to be looking at every position on the Dallas Cowboys roster, examining what went wrong and what went right in 2020, although there wasn't a lot there, and focusing on how they can be better in 2021. And because this is the Dallas Cowboys, because this was so much of their story last season, the best place to start kind of figured to be the quarterbacks. And obviously we know that Dak Prescott is the face of the Dallas Cowboys. One of the last times that head coach Mike McCarthy took to the podium when the team was having minicamp, he specifically said that Dak Prescott is the face of the franchise. He noted that anytime he has kind of a question or a point that he wants to address with the team, he goes to Dak Prescott first. I've said before that Dak Prescott is a dream if you are a Dallas Cowboys fan, like all of us are. And if you still don't believe in him as a franchise quarterback, as an elite quarterback, well, he's probably going to prove you severely wrong in 2021, like he has been doing for the last 2 years. So, kind of, so to speak. But obviously, Dak Prescott was hurt last season, which is what threw the Cowboys into a whole pit of misery. We know that the Cowboys were a huge disaster without Dak Prescott in 2020. And that really is kind of what went wrong. When you look at the position as far as what it held last year, Dak Prescott gets hurt in week 5 against the New York Giants. The Cowboys go on to win that game thanks to some, solid play from Andy Dalton in the fourth quarter, and they're 2-3 on the season. The Cowboys had finished 6-10, which, I don't have to remind you, means that the rest of the ride was a little bit bumpy. But it is worth mentioning that the Cowboys did win 4 games in 2020 without their starting quarterback. And I'm not trying to say that we should give the Cowboys a trophy for this or anything like that. But when you think about the history of backup quarterbacks when it comes to the Cowboys, it is really not that glowing. Yes, Andy Dalton struggled and could not make some deep throws, and we'll take a look at that in a specific sense in just a moment. But Andy Dalton was kind of the first backup quarterback to have success for the Cowboys in forever, really, since Dak Prescott. Yeah, I know, Dak Prescott's the starter for the Cowboys, but he was the third string quarterback 5 years ago in 2016. Kellen Moore, now offensive coordinator, hurts his ankle in training camp and is forced out of the rotation. Tony Romo, as we all know, in Seattle in the preseason goes down, and it's Dak Prescott's gig, and it really has been that ever since, obviously, until the injury last year. But before that, I don't have to remind you how disgusting the 2015 season was for the Cowboys. The Cowboys ultimately played 12 games without their starter at the time, which was, of course, Tony Romo, and they won one of those games. And they did not have a lot of backup quarterbacks to really be proud of. The Cowboys entered that 2015 season coming off of the catch that Dez Bryant definitely had, thinking that they could kind of get right back on track and really go challenge for an NFC title, perhaps even a Super Bowl. But we know how important QB2 is for the Cowboys, and the team just hasn't taken it that seriously in recent memory. And when you look at it, it's a flaw. Look at the last thing on this point here. The Cowboys had a lack of talented backup quarterback options. Think about 2015. Brandon Weeden was QB2 for the Dallas Cowboys. When Tony Romo got hurt, they traded for Matt Castle. Yes, they had Kellen Moore on the roster, but he was an undrafted free agent who their then offensive coordinator, Scott Linehan, was in love with. The irony about that is that Kellen would go on to take Scott Linehan's job. And after that, that was 2015, 2016. Dak Prescott takes over, and Tony Romo was kind of his backup. Obviously, he was injured for the first half of that season. The Cowboys did employ Mark Sanchez as kind of a veteran presence, and Dak Prescott did talk a lot during his rookie season about how important it was to have that veteran guidance from Mark Sanchez. And I know that sounds silly, but it is worth remembering that Mark Sanchez took the New York Jets to back-to-back AFC title games his rookie and second seasons in the NFL. That was a really valuable thing to be able to teach to somebody like Dak Prescott. Mark Sanchez used to tell Dak his rookie season when the Cowboys were winning all those games, he would say, look, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea how difficult it is. You have to take a moment to kind of soak it all in because it's not going to be like this every year, a lesson that Mark Sanchez ultimately knows all too well. By the way, I think Taylor Swift is releasing an elongated version of All Too Well. Definitely looking forward to that. But getting back on track, in 2017, yes, Dak Prescott now the unquestioned starter for the Dallas Cowboys, but do you know who their backup quarterback was in 2017? Yes, it was technically Kellen Moore, but the Cowboys' primary backup quarterback was undrafted free agent Cooper Rush. And I don't mean this as a slight to Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush certainly has talents and has been around a long time. I've interviewed him. He's a great guy. But that was not a viable or sustainable option. Yes, the Dallas Cowboys are a team that has had a very specific, bit of success when it comes to an undrafted free agent quarterback in the aforementioned Tony Romo, but treating your second quarterback as this kind of throwaway thing that you can just have an undrafted free agent rookie at the time in Cooper Rush operate is a really irresponsible way to go about things. And you look at it, Cooper Rush was the Cowboys backup in 2017, 2018, 2019. Obviously, Jason Garrett was dismissed after that season, and he never had to play. There was a moment, you will recall, on Thursday Night Football in 2018 where Cooper Rush had to come in for just a moment, and it looked a little bit scary, but thankfully Dak Prescott was able to come back and still be great. But the whole point of it is that you cannot just treat this like it is some sort of cavalier position. In fact, it was super predictable last year when the Cowboys moved on from Cooper Rush that Jason Garrett's New York Giants would swoop him up, and they ultimately did. Swoop, scoop, whatever. Either way, the Cowboys, I'm not trying to say that Andy Dalton was great. We're about to talk about his specific successes and lack of successes with the Cowboys last year in just a moment, but it is worth mentioning that Andy Dalton last year with the Cowboys is kind of the most successful backup quarterback the Cowboys have had in very recent history. They won 4 games. I mean, that's notable. That's difficult. That's especially difficult for this particular team. And so when we take a look at Andy Dalton last year, not a lot to be enthused about when it comes to NFL Next Gen stats. Andy Dalton obviously had some success along the right side of the field, deep down. That's where Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb like to operate. Tony Pollard off on a couple of swings and some halfback pass type things. But ultimately, this is some really average pedestrian stuff that we're talking about when it comes to Andy Dalton's skills as an NFL quarterback in 2021. Now, thankfully, Andy Dalton is now a member of the Chicago Bears, and we wish him all the best. Maybe he's going to be their starter. Obviously, Justin Fields is a part of that equation. But the reason the Cowboys are going to be back on track this year, we're all believing, is because Dak Prescott is back. We all know that. We've discussed it. He's moving around. He's grooving. Things are on track for Dak to be awesome once again in 2021. Another reason is that Andy Dalton is gone. And I don't mean that in a negative way or as some sort of slight about Andy Dalton, but he is clearly not enough to carry an NFL franchise in today's moment, a painful lesson that we all learned last year. And again, we wish him luck in Chicago, but Andy Dalton being out of here is ultimately a good thing. And maybe he nets the Cowboys a compensatory pick in 2022, but that remains to be seen. The only real kind of flaw when it comes to the Cowboys right now in their current quarterback moment is that they really haven't added anybody besides Dak Prescott having his new contract. They haven't made any real moves in the quarterback department. And you might be saying, what moves are there to make? They paid Dak Prescott. That's an awesome thing. And you're right. It is an awesome thing. It's something they should have done 2 years ago, but we learned last year that QB2 is a really valuable position, and you cannot just be cavalier about it. Taking a look at what the Cowboys have on their roster right now in the quarterback room, Dak Prescott, obviously the starter. These are listed alphabetically. Nobody freak out. They do have last year's 7th-round rookie, Ben DiNucci. They do have Garrett Gilbert, who played rather well for them in the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers that they ultimately lost. And they do have, incidentally enough, Cooper Rush. And this really should concern you because it concerns me, and it should concern the Cowboys because Dak Prescott is awesome. Top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Yes, top 5 quarterback in the NFL. If your friends, your family don't believe them, tell them to come right here, watch this video so they can get educated. By the way, while they're all here, while you're here, make sure you subscribe to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. That makes us oh so happy. But this is not enough. You cannot go into another season with this being the case because as awesome as Dak Prescott is, as much as we all ultimately believe in Dak Prescott, the question still remains, what if Dak Prescott gets injured? What if Dak Prescott is out for some bit of time? What if Dak Prescott cannot be available to you for whatever reason in 2021? We all have learned very, very, very recently the price that this team has to pay when Dak Prescott is not there for them. You can have a functional backup quarterback like Andy Dalton in your quarterback room, and it can still not be enough. And that is an unfortunate reality in the NFL. When you think about it, there are 32 teams in this league, and there really aren't even 32 functional quarterbacks that can operate them successfully week in and week out. Some teams, like the Chicago Bears, for example, have a low-quality starter, and that's their best option. Now, we'll see what Justin Fields ultimately develops into. Talking about Andy Dalton, of course, this has been a rough video for Andy Dalton. We really don't mean to throw any shade or anything. Andy Dalton played very hard for the Cowboys last year, but the question remains, what is going to happen if Dak Prescott gets hurt? People love to say, a really common saying is that QB2 is the most popular guy in town because fans get sick of the starting quarterback. Hopefully you're not the kind of fan that gets sick of Dak Prescott. There's no way that QB2 is popular on the Cowboys. It might be popular in Chicago with Justin Fields holding that mantle at the moment, but the reality is that if we rank the importance of positions in the NFL, on an NFL roster, on the Dallas Cowboys roster, Dak Prescott, number one, obviously. You could go Tyron Smith, number two. Maybe you want to say Lyle Collins, number three, Zach Martin, number four. Like, we're talking about the order of importance that they all hold with regard to the Cowboys and to the Cowboys' hopeful success in any given season. We agree. It's Dak, it's Tyron, it's offensive lineman. Then you get into your starting edge rush, your starting cornerback, right? Like all these players, whatever. And I think that QB2 probably hits the ranks, before any other backup. Certainly, you could make an argument that QB2 is even ahead of some starters if you really are in that particular mood. I don't know if I am. I had a peanut butter and banana sandwich for lunch, so I'm not like feeling mega spicy. But the point is that is an important position, because that position is one moment away, one awful moment at home against the New York Giants in Week 5 away from being the most important player on your team. I don't know if you ever watched the show Designated Survivor on Netflix. That's what QB2 is for any NFL team. They are the designated survivor. If something goes wrong, if something runs amok, if some sort of panic is induced and your starting quarterback is unavailable to you, this particular person is the player that you are going to have to rely on for a lot of success. The Cowboys had to rely on Andy Dalton last year, and even then, Andy Dalton was injured against Washington, as we all remember, which is why the Cowboys had to start Ben DiNucci. So life is fragile in the NFL, as we all know. Injuries happen. This is professional football. That is going to happen. You have to assume that it's going to happen in some senses. And if you're going to assume, you have to have an answer. And so who are the guys? Because let's put this back up here again. I mean, if Dak Prescott goes down, do you really trust any of these players, right? Like, do you think Andy Dalton won 4 games for the Cowboys last year? And again, I'm not trying to tell you that Andy Dalton is or was good last season, but I will tell you this confidently, something I believe in this Corazon right here. I don't think any of these non-Dak Prescott quarterbacks on this list could win the 4 games that Andy Dalton won last year. Now, the Cowboys beat the Vikings, who were not a great team. They beat the Bengals, obviously Andy Dalton's former team. They beat the 49ers, and they beat the tar out of the Eagles, who were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. So it's not like they had really any high-quality wins. I'm not trying to brag about what Andy Dalton did last year, but I guarantee you, none of these guys could have done that. Garrett Gilbert, yes, he played really well, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Cowboys kept that game interesting for a while, but ultimately ended up losing. And I don't believe that any of these players, I think, when the Cowboys signed Andy Dalton last year, it got, really annoying because Dak Prescott still needed a contract. And you had all these people saying, oh, watch out. If Andy Dalton gets a chance to start, this team isn't going to skip a beat. This team's offense is still going to be just as good. And the team's offense did have some success. I talked about that win against the Eagles later on in the year. It was a really nice offensive showing for the Cowboys, but it was kind of 1 in a million, and it came against one of the worst teams in the NFL. And so that being said, Andy Dalton was the most devotion last year that the Cowboys had given the quarterback 2 position in some time. And I applauded them for that. Last year, I wrote about that. I talked about how it was really smart of the Cowboys to hedge their bet at quarterback, not against Dak Prescott needing a new contract, but in the sense that, as we've talked about so far today, if you are the quarterback 2 for any given team, a moment away from being super important to that franchise. And the Cowboys made a wise decision to depend on somebody that was somewhat dependable in Andy Dalton. None of these guys are dependable. And that's not to say anything negative about them, but that's just the reality. We've seen enough of them so far in their careers, and Cooper Rush and Garrett Gilbert, to know that they are not the guys. Yes, Ben DiNucci is still early on in his career and didn't really get a fair shake at things last year. It was unfortunate that he had to start early on as a 7th-round rookie on Sunday Night Football. At that, I mean, just a rough go, although he was still moderately better than Carson Wentz, but that's a whole different discussion. So what do you do? And I think, we've talked about this several times. We've written about it at bloggingtheboys.com, but you have to go get somebody. I really believe that the future QB2 of the 2021 Dallas Cowboys is not on the team right now. Now, training camp sometimes can, bring the best out of players. Maybe Ben DiNucci lights it up in training camp out in Oxnard, California. That is certainly a possibility, but it is not one that you can rely on. It's not one that you can bet on. We're talking about things that we can bet the house on, because this is the house. This is your NFL team. You have to bet the house, the future of the house, on somebody. And I don't think there's anybody you want to bet on right now. Now, these are just a couple of free agent quarterbacks, but hey, let's think about this here. Brett Hundley, obviously somebody who Mike McCarthy knows from their time together in Green Bay, had a visit with the Cowboys a little while ago. I mean, that is an option. I still don't feel great about it, but it is an option. Robert Griffin III, Heisman Trophy winner, is on social media trying to campaign for a spot in the NFL again. There have been a lot of Cowboys fans who have wanted to see this for a while. Obviously, there's a hometown connection there. I'm a fighting Texas Aggie myself, not a Baylor Bear in any sense, but I can certainly see that. And RG3, has played somewhat well in recent history, did not play supremely well for the Ravens last year when he had to enter the game. But I mean, still, that I think I would feel better about RG3 than I would anybody else in the Cowboys roster at the moment, which isn't saying much, but still would be an improvement in a literal sense. And Matt Barkley, another option. None of these are going to make you feel great. I realize that. None of these are going to make you want to jump up and down and give me a high five. But if you're high five on the screen, be careful. By the way, I don't want you to damage your stuff. But the point is the Cowboys need to be giving these options, all options, consideration. And we have seen that so far this offseason. I mean, the Cowboys have explored a couple of different veteran quarterbacks. We named Brett Hundley. Obviously, as free agency, dwindled down, there are still guys out on the open market that can be had. But there has to be some sort of focus on improving this team in this particular capacity at this particular position, because if you have to rely on this guy, it is not going to be great. But hopefully you don't have to rely on this guy in 2021. Hopefully Dak Prescott is a baller once again in 2021, because that's who he is. I mean, I've said before that this wasn't sustainable for Dak Prescott in 2020. A lot of people kind of disagree with that. But Dak Prescott, in not even 5 full complete games last year, had 9 touchdowns, almost 1,900 yards, 68% completion percentage, one short of nice. I know, only 4 interceptions, 99.6 quarterback rating. This is elite stuff, people. I mean, this is the quarterback of our favorite team. This is the face of our favorite team. This is somebody who is going to be the reason that the Cowboys have a lot of success. One of the shows we do on the Blog and the Boys podcast network is called the 750. It features myself and 2-time Super Bowl champion Tony Casillas. I don't have any Super Bowl rings, but Tony certainly does. And on this week's episode, we talked about players who need to have a big season for the Cowboys if they want to have a lot of success. And there's no question that the main one is Dak Prescott, because the reality here is that you can look at these numbers, and I'm not trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but at the time of Dak Prescott's injury, the Cowboys were a quarter away from becoming 2-3. They weren't having a lot of team success. And that's not all Dak Prescott's fault. It's not even really mostly his fault. It's just kind of minorly his fault. Is minorly a word? But either way, this was obviously at the fault of the Cowboys defense, the Cowboys coaching staff, all the unique challenges that last season represented, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I know that we all believe that Dak Prescott's going to lead this team to victory more often than not in 2021, but there's no question that this team is going to ride with him. As he has success, they are going to have success. And as he is a very good player and a very good quarterback, it should be more often than not that he ultimately does have success. And where will that be found? Where will the improvement ultimately be felt for the Cowboys when it comes to the quarterback play of Dak Prescott? I want to put Andy Dalton's next-gen stats chart up here again for you last season, and you can see where he struggled. I mean, Andy Dalton, even struggled behind the line of scrimmage, all right? I mean, that's tough to do. but Andy Dalton had difficulty at times, and there were a lot of challenges. Again, I don't want to just have this be the, not being kind to Andy Dalton episode here on the channel. But I mean, the reality was he was not great for the Cowboys last season. Hopefully he's better this year, because that would net the Cowboys a compensatory pick. But when we take a look at Dak Prescott last season, visualize this in your mind. Boom. Look at how much that changes. We're going to go back and forth. This is Andy Dalton again here. Look at all this green. Boom. It's like a Christmas tree in the good sense. The green's everywhere. I don't know if it's Christmas trees aren't really green and red, but you get my point. Anyway, the point is Dak Prescott, where he is much different than Andy Dalton, is Dak Prescott can take advantage of the elite talents that this Cowboys wide receiver group possesses. We know that Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup can get downfield. We know that CeeDee Lamb is the yak god, as he was at college and in college at Oklahoma. I mean, we know that Dak Prescott can utilize his weapons to the degree that they were needed. They were intended to be utilized. That they need to be utilized that way. Dak Prescott can do that. I mean, that is the polar, most stark difference between Andy Dalton. Again, let's look back at this one more time. I mean, that's a lot of red. I mean, that red is basically the entire middle of the field for Andy Dalton. When you look at Dak Prescott is elite in that range. And you know what happens in that range? Receivers are past the second level or challenging the second level and getting away from the second level and getting to a point where they can score, and they can score at will. And that is something that we want to see happen a lot in 2021, which is why having Dak Prescott back, really beyond the obvious, is going to go a long way. If somebody wants to know, somebody asks you, your friend, they're still on the fence, man, how is having Dak back going to help? I want you to show them this. Look at this. Ugh, this is gross. And then you put Dak Prescott up there. This is the difference. Taking advantage of down the field throws, something that Dak Prescott is elite at. All of these up here, you see them all right here? These are a bunch of dimes, all right? It's going to be raining dimes in 2021 from Dak Prescott, and we are all very excited to see it. So, all that being said, that's the first episode of our training camp preview. Talking about positions. Obviously, quarterbacks, you have to start there. These quarterbacks are the face of the team. They get all the pomp and circumstance. But we're going to be diving into every single position, so we don't want you to miss any of it. So make sure you subscribe right here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. We appreciate all of you who have. We're very close to 10,000 subscribers. Let's see if we can get there sooner rather than later. I am RJ Ochoa. You know me, of course, from Blogging the Boys. We love to have a great time. Our goal, our mission, our objective in life is to make your life as a Dallas Cowboys fan more informed. We want to make sure that you have all the Dallas Cowboys content that you need, whether that's articles at bloggingtheboys.com, videos here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, podcasts on the Blogging the Boys network. We make sure that you have something going on every single day because just like you, we're obsessed with the Dallas Cowboys, and we want to make sure that we are all obsessed in the right way, moving towards the right goals, and let's keep doing that. So, all that being said, last thing on the agenda, that's it. Do me a favor, have the absolute best day of all time. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.